What is this place? Where is everyone? Huh? Oh, the feather.
Hey everyone, did you watch the big show? During this year's State of Unreal, we released Unreal Engine 5 with oodles of updates including a redesigned Unreal Editor, better performance, artist-friendly animation tools, an extended mesh creation and editing toolset, improved path tracing, and so much more. See a complete list of changes at docs.unrealengine.com, then download it today on the Epic Games Launcher or GitHub. In addition to UE5 itself, you can now enjoy 2 new sample projects. Lyra Starter Game is a living sample gameplay project built alongside UE5 development to serve as an excellent starting point for creating new games, as well as a hands-on learning resource. And the brand new City sample reveals how the scene from The Matrix Awakens, an Unreal 5 experience, was built and consists of a complete city with buildings, vehicles, and crowds of metahuman characters. Beyond the complete sample, the content is available in separate packs, so you can download just the vehicles, for example. Snag both of the new sample projects from the UE Marketplace. We recognize we wouldn't be here today without the incredible Unreal community, and to help you on your dev journey, we've launched the Epic Developer Community, a one-stop shop to explore tutorials, learning resources, code snippets, technical discussions, and of course, ask questions. Head over to dev.epicgames.com/community to join in. If you want to see the state of Unreal for yourself and hear all the juicy details firsthand, head to the Unreal Engine YouTube channel to watch the show on demand. While there, you'll also find the series of tech talks that were streamed after the event. In The Matrix Awakens Generating a World, we share how we procedurally generated the city for The Matrix Awakens, an Unreal Engine 5 experience demo, using a combination of Unreal Engine native procedural tools and a game-changing new Houdini workflow. In The Matrix Awakens Creating a World, we dive into the inspiration and approach behind the environment. Or dive into Your First Game in UE5, a practical in-editor demonstration of how to get started making a game from scratch, highlighting UE5 features along the way. We show how fast you can create a game leveraging new and established features of the engine. This week's first community spotlight is a wonderfully vibrant, stylized environment built in UE5 by Fabian Lopez Orosa. Breath of the Sky was a wholly self-created project, aside from a few VFX. If you adore this project as much as we do, head to their ArtStation page and let them know. Before you now is a gorgeous replica of the famous St. Paul Cathedral by Juan Pablo Fuentes Ruiz. Stroll on over to their ArtStation page to take in the sights and explore more of the scene. From solo dev Just Perky Games, The Axis Unseen is a horror hunting simulator where you chase down folklore-inspired monsters, but be careful, they're hunting you too. Learn more about the development over on the forums and wishlist The Axis Unseen on Steam. Thanks for watching this week's news and community spotlight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and today we certainly do have a lot to celebrate this week, as Unreal Engine 5 has officially released. So if you haven't already, make sure you go and download and play with it. And while you're at it, give us some feedback on the new community website, which is dev.epicgames.com/community. It's nice, new, fancy, very shiny, very colorful. I love it very much. So please make sure if you haven't yet, you go over there, sign up, and play around in there as well. With that in mind, let me introduce our two incredible guests for today, Nate Perkpile and Dan Nguyen, both solo developers for some upcoming games that you'll need to keep an eye on because they are incredible. So first, Nate, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Nate Perkpile, and I've been making games for about 18 years now. I worked on stuff like Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, was lead artist on Fallout 76, Metroid Prime 3, a bunch of stuff. But anyways, I've gone independent now, and I'm doing my own solo indie game using Unreal 5, and it's called The Axis Unseen.
Yeah, and it looks incredible, first of all. Let me just say,
Thanks.
even aside from all of it, I plan on playing it. I plan on playing both of your games. I'm super excited about them. And then next, Dan, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. I'm a software engineer by trade, but I've always been fascinated with video game development and world building and storytelling. UE5 and previously UE4 was, instrumental in letting me pursue my dream project. Always been fascinated in fantasy RPG adventure games, so I made my indie game in development right now, Path to Etenway. It's a RPG game. It's kind of my dream project that I've always wanted to make. So glad to join you, Nate, and excited to talk to you and Nate in the community about all this. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank both of you for being here. Also, there's a little bit of a storm going on over at Dan. That thunder was
Sorry about
honestly
that.
the
It scared me a
perfect
little bit.
intro. Honestly, that was timed on purpose. That was absolutely perfect. We got that dramatic intro that we needed.
Oh yeah, it spooked me a little bit.
But anyway, with that, let's dive into both of your projects a little bit further. I'd really love to talk about how some of the new UE5 features have helped the development of your projects, some cool and innovative ways that you've used them, and then just, explored these awesome games that are incredible to begin with. So let's go ahead and start with Nate. Let's talk some more about the Axis Unseen.
Sure. So the Axis Unseen is a hunting simulator, but you're hunting monsters instead of just like deer and things like that. So these creatures can also hunt you. And it's set in sort of a surreal world, and I've stylized it using Nanite and Lumen together to give it, I think, a nice distinct look that I can talk about later, how it's also easier to make it this way too. So I'm excited to see what people think of it. And if you want, we can check out the trailer for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I love the logo too at the end there. So good.
Yeah, I was talking about company names with my wife, and one of the things that was listed was just Perky, but like just the name Perky. And I was like, oh, she thought I said just Perky. And it's like, well, that makes sense. I'm a solo dev, so I just kind of rolled with that.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. I love that
And
trailer, by the way.
Thanks. That was after only about 6 months of working on the game too, and I had not really used Unreal before that. I like poked at a couple tutorials very lightly, but yeah. So that's how much I was able to get done in 6 months, which is awesome. Like the learning resources are great, and it's a lot faster than I'm used to. Like I have my whole like production schedule, and I was beating it by like 2.5 times what I thought I would. Like, oh, this is clearly going to take a week. No, it's a lot easier than that, even though I don't know what I'm doing. So
yeah, that's incredible. I love that. Also, those cinematic views of just walking over a hill and getting that nice scenic view, so good. I'm going to be spending the majority of this just hyping up everything in both of the games because they look so incredible. But just those, I feel like some of the best parts of games is those moments where you walk through a door or you walk over a hill or some kind of threshold, and then it just blooms in front of you. You've got this magnificent view that could basically just be a piece of art in and of itself. And there were so many of those showcased in just that trailer. So I am so excited to see what else comes up for that game.
Yeah, it was really fun to build all those, and I'm like leveraging Megascans to do a lot of that stuff faster, so I'm not spending all my time, making more video game rocks, but could spend my time making like the big sculptures that you see, things like that instead. That ended up like each one of those different biomes that you saw, I did those in like a day for that trailer.
Oh my gosh.
It's because I've also stylized it in a way where it's easier to get that new stuff. Like with Nanite, I can have all that geometry be real, so I can just do VR sculpts and just shove that right into the game. Like I'm not doing low poly models and baking normal maps and UVs. Like I'm literally just taking the model and putting it in the engine, which still seems like magic a little bit to me. but it actually works. It's nice. So it's like it lets me do it faster, but it's also looking nicer. Like that's a combo I like.
Yeah. The amount of rocks that can get done in a 1 hour time span now is significantly more.
For sure.
Yeah.
And,
I'm so excited about that.
yeah, and I used to have it really like realistic, like the initial Megascan stuff that's in there. And if you want, we can show a video for that. It's the third
Yeah.
one. And this is showing how it used to be realistic, but it was really hard to like track the creatures and to make out what is what because it was so realistic. Those tracks just got lost, and it really matters where you're walking because like they can follow your tracks, you can follow their tracks. So I ended up pushing it in this stylized direction, which works really well because then it gives me a more distinct look. It really leverages Lumen for the dynamic lighting and showing that off, and also lets me do those models without any UVs and baking and stuff. So that worked out really well.
Yeah, for sure. I also feel like making stuff a tiny bit more stylized kind of future proofs it a little bit because realism, we're always pushing more towards what looks the realist, breaking the matrix sort of thing. But when it's stylized, I feel like you can end up playing that game in maybe 10 years from now and it still holds up really well because it has its own style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think having Lumen is kind of key to that too, because I think if I took a lot of other engines and I was like, I'm going to remove all the texture information, like without good lighting, that looks terrible. So that works out nicely.
You mean you don't want to have single poly shadows sitting across everything?
Yeah, like where is anything? I can't see. So I've been
Yeah.
really happy about that. And especially not having to do like baking and stuff. Like as a solo dev, if I had to bake an open world game, like I just couldn't do that because on other games I've worked on, there was like this network of computers that would run over the weekend, like all crunching the numbers to then have the lighting so you could actually see the results. And like I can just change it and it's fine. Like I can delete whatever, update my weather, it's fine.
Yeah. Instead of just breaking absolutely everything.
Right. Like, let me just go set up a network farm in the garage or something. I don't think that's happening.
Set it up, leave it to render for a week. This computer is a brick. Nobody touch it. Nobody breathe on it. Just walk away.
Hope the kids don't unplug it. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Now, Dan, on that note, I know that you were saying that you used a lot of nanite in your project as well, specifically around some of the foliage, which I know we'll dive into a little bit more. I'm just very excited about that particular usage of it. But I'd also like to dive a little bit more into your project to talk about some of that too.
Yeah, I just like to repeat Nate's comment about rocks and whatnot. The rocks and foliage are kind of like the bane of my existence regarding creating those assets. And yeah, I mean, the first things I try to create when getting into this game development stuff was my frustration with rocks and foliage. And most of the key thing with those is that, for me at least, I don't have the latest and greatest machine and whatnot, but UE5 definitely makes it approachable. Because with nanite, polygons don't even matter anymore, really. I mean, the performance on kind of just me making some of these nanite vegetation assets, they're awesome, and they run, really well on UE5, and it's something I've always kind of strive to look for, and UE5 provides that. A little bit about my game. It has a lot of that, rocks and foliage, so be prepared for that, I suppose. But I've always wanted to create like kind of a fantasy world. I'm a big Lord of the Rings film fan, so kind of those big landscapes, fantastical kind of castles and whatnot.
Yes.
I've always wanted to make a world like that. Some sword slashing also, that doesn't hurt. Throw some sword slashing, some magic, that doesn't hurt as well. So something that I always wanted to create. I always grew up on the Kingdom Hearts games, Legend of Zelda. That's a clear. Yeah, that's a big inspiration for kind of my motivation with this game. Um, and speaking of kind of name reminded me, Megascans. One of the big things that got me into UE4 at the time was the Quixel before they joined Epic was their Rebirth video. That kind of blew my mind, like
Yes.
how realistic a world you can have. And this was before Nanite or Lumen. They had they were using at the time, so that kind of blew my mind, and that just coincided with my quarterly Lord of the Rings marathon at the time, and it just kind of
Quarterly.
perfect storm that I just kind of it pushed me to make this game. So yeah, so that's kind of the gist of Path to Etenway and my motivation for creating it. I guess, would you like to watch my video reel of my development, I suppose, the combat Path to Etenway?
Yeah, absolutely. So beautiful. I just can't get over it. Again, it's got that very cinematic, very scenic view where we've got several times in just that trailer alone that you see this expansive world you've built and how beautiful it is. And especially now that you've mentioned it's inspired by Lord of the Rings, I can absolutely see how that relates into it in just the best possible way. All those caves and ruins, but the big mountains, big fields. And I am seeing in chat, everybody is freaking out about the amount of grass that you have managed to put in there. Everybody loves the
Grass
grass.
is awesome. Well, thanks so much, Tina. And I kind of want to repeat kind of what Nate said earlier with some of the tools in Unreal Engine. They're easy to kind of learn. I'm not a cinematographer at all, but the Unreal Engine has these cinematic tools that are easy to learn, and I applied that to that video reel you just watched. So kind of just want to repeat what Nate was saying, because it's true. And it's very approachable, and I'm so thankful that I'm a software engineer. I don't know anything about cinematography, and it definitely makes it I'm able to capture some of that world, and at least I was able to convey some awesome grass. So
The best grass around. There's a hashtag that we could take out of this.
oh, that's an awesome
I'm
hashtag.
kidding. Oh no, we're gonna see it everywhere.
Oh no,
But-
sorry about that.
Again, though, it's both of you are solo developers, and these projects are, one, first and foremost, so beautiful. Just, masterpieces. They look like pieces of art, truly. It looks like you have a full art team behind everything that you're doing, and it's just the two of you building these things. It's incredible. And then on top of that, the lighting that both of you have achieved in just the trailers alone, it's immersive. Both of them are different from each other, but still, in both of them, through just the trailers, not even playing the games yet, I felt like I was in the world that you have created. I felt immersed in what I was doing and what I was seeing and the things that you had built and that we were seeing. And it's just, I can't end up hyping enough. This is gonna sound like I'm sponsored for you guys at this point, because it's just so incredible. But truly, it's just, even through small clips that I saw on Twitter and on your socials and stuff, it's just incredible work. And I have to, first of all, give both of you just endless kudos for the work that you've done so far.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
It's been really great to work with. And I really want to double down on that immersion part, actually. Like, one of the things I want to do in my game is have all the UI elements just be in world. So no like HUD icons or anything. Like, you saw it in the trailer briefly, but if it's like, how many arrows do I have? Well, you got to check. Or
Yeah.
if you're going to like level up, you go to those altars that you see also in the trailer, and like that's how you level up your stats. So I want to have the whole thing just no UI at all. Like, besides your main menu, click new game, and then you're good.
Sure. That's really cool, actually. I dig that a lot, especially the idea, because I know I'm never going to be checking how many arrows I have, so I'm probably going to be reaching, and there's no arrows, and I'm going to die horribly over and over and over.
Exactly. But I think that's a really interesting moment in a way, because it's like, oops, as opposed to like, yeah, obviously I have no arrows. Well, it's also kind
Right.
of obvious once it's not on the bow, so you might notice that.
Sure, but at that
Surprise,
point,
cat.
Kitty.
the real guest. This is the reason I had you on, is for the cat. How about you, Dan? How are some of the UI aspects of your game? Are you doing a similar thing of very minimal UI, or do you have something a little bit more expansive?
I agree with kind of Nate. I like a clean display. I mean, kind of, I'll have something minimal for sure, but I definitely like the appeal of not showing anything. But there'll be some aspects that I've always kind of liked in some RPG games that will have some sort of UI. I just haven't gotten to it. There's just so much with UE5 I'm trying to explore at the moment, but that's definitely something I'll have to address. But I like a clean UI. I mean, if you know, having something like Nate described would be like the best possible scenario, but I don't think, we'll see if I can pull it off or not. But I'll
Yeah,
have some
I don't
sort of
think it's,
UI
like,
with the health
for
bar.
every game.
Probably. Yeah. So it was something. UI will be something I explore, and I'll obviously have like a main menu, so something of that sort. So yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe neither of you should have main menus, and you're just thrown in the
Just
game
do
and
that
hope
in
for the
game
best.
too, yeah. Maybe there's a new game altar that you have to walk up to.
Yeah.
Let me add it to the
Oh.
feature list.
There you go.
Resolution picking shrines. Yep.
Perfect. But yeah, I think that's a good choice in that case, because again, like you were saying, it makes you feel immersed in the moment. You feel more like you are that character. You are the character that is ranting. English is hard, everybody. Okay, you have 3 seconds where you can roast me. Okay, we'll have it. Okay, it's over. Roast time is over. But running out of arrows in real time, nothing gets more immersive than that. And running away and haphazardly trying to craft something in the meantime, there's a certain level of panic that induces that I feel like you can only get with a minimal HUD experience.
Yeah, that's the hope. Especially
Yeah.
with it being kind of a horror vibe in my case. I'm okay
Yes.
with you being a little scared running from a monster in the dark with no arrows.
Absolutely. And then same for Path to Edenway as well, being able to swing the sword and first of all see the beautiful VFX that you've made with all of those attacks that you did. Some of those were just incredible. I mean, they were so glowy, they were sparkly. It was very captivating to look at. Was there anything in particular that inspired the combat style?
The combat style. Some of the games that I play, like in my childhood, they were kind of stiff and whatnot. But I mean, I enjoyed them. I've always wanted a little bit more fluidity in some of the combat. So, uh, a lot of that was kind of a lot of trial and error. Just kind of play testing it constantly. I have like an hour or a 30 minute to an hour play session, like kind of each week, just to kind of tweak some of that stuff. And it really is kind of like a never ending process and tweaking just a whole bunch of values just to get the combat down to where it's a little bit more fluid. My whole process kind of working on this has been just fluidity and whatnot. And I definitely take inspiration from some of the more recent games nowadays, like Fallen Order. That's another RPG game. So their kind of camera system was a little bit more dynamic, which I loved. And him running around with a lightsaber. There's a lot of parallels with my character and his. So kind of got some inspiration from that for sure. A game that was also made in UE4. So look, there's a lot of talent out there, and I drew a lot of inspiration, kind of insight from professionals and whatnot. So that's pretty much my approach to working on this.
Yeah, I think it's a good viewpoint. Be able to take inspiration from outside sources and then repurpose them in a new, fresh, and unique way. And I can kind of see the call to the lightsabers with the way that the swords are held as you're running and everything. Love it.
Yeah, I try to limit that because I don't want to make them so OP. That'd be boring, right? Like at some point, you'll not be able to use that all the time. You have in that footage you probably see him with the regular sword, not glowy and whatnot. So I'll definitely try. It's a balancing game, kind of to try to determine how much of that you should allow the player to have. So that's definitely a struggle with some of this game development, game design stuff that I'm learning now, which is great. It sounds like I'm complaining, but it's an awesome journey. So.
No, but like you say, playing it all the time, that's really important. And it sounds incredibly obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people were just like, oh, I got to get the next thing done. It's like, hold on, play the game. Make sure it's fun, tune it, stop every now and then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. With that, I got to ask now, how often are you playing The Axis Unseen? Is it to the point you're sick of it yet? Or...
No, I do about the same, where it's like every week or so I'll stop and play it for a good half an hour to an hour. And I'm always changing stuff, so I'm not bored of it. And sometimes my kids are watching me play. It's like, oh, watch out.
That's the best. Yeah, I agree. There's no better way to tweak something than to actually be in it and play it, for sure. And I can definitely see also kind of the advantage of doing that from the solo dev standpoint, because you have control over everything. You find a bug and it's not a matter of trying to get to the team that's maybe in charge of that particular section of the bug, making sure you're not stepping on anybody else's toes. It's, something's broken, I'm going to fix it. So.
I love that part. If anything breaks, I know exactly who to blame. Love it. No meetings, no Jira tickets. Just fix it.
You can send passive-aggressive emails to yourself about it and let it be done.
This fourth monitor here is my whole task tracking and time tracking monitor. So that's the watching over me, making sure I'm paying attention.
Micromanaged by the monitor.
Yeah. And also it's really easy to do that in Unreal with the whole play and editor thing, which I'm sure plenty of other people are used to. But I'm not used to that. I'm used to like, stop. Load the whole game, load to where you want to go, or load your save, and put in a bunch of console commands, as opposed to like, you press the button and drop down wherever your camera was. It saved like a year off my schedule from that, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do got to ask, we've talked a little bit about Lumen and a little bit about Nana, but I have to know, compared to even previous version of Unreal or other engines that you've been in, what have been some of the features from UE5 that have made just the biggest impact overall in the development of both of your games?
I
Yeah, I
mean,
can chime
for
in.
me, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that, Nate. You know, the initial thing that kind of drew me into Unreal Engine is just how you can set up really good lighting immediately. So these were kind of built-in tools for UE4. But then what's so great about, you know, UE5 is that kind of the performance aspect of a game. I think a lot of gamers we share this same dread where FPS plagues us. It's kind of like a constant back and forth. So like fight. So I mean, it's kind of like the worst feeling you're a kid and you have this PC and you can't play the games you want. And the same thing applies when, you know, developing games. You want at least my approach when using UE5 is that I kind of want to prototype some of my environments a little bit quickly. You know, if the FPS is low and you're pulling these assets in, it's demoralizing a little bit as a game dev because, you know, you can't do stuff as quickly as you can. But with Nanite, I can pull in, you know, a high poly asset, no problem. You know, like foliage, I kind of like that dense grass and whatnot. And I have some photogrammetry assets for rocks, of rocks I scan, you know, around my area. And I just need to pull those in and add it to my UE5 project. But those are kind of like the heavy hitters, at least like the big concerns for me regarding kind of, you know, UE5's just made a huge impact during its early access phase. That's helped a lot. And I just updated, you know, I had that FOMO where, you know, I was fearing that I was being left behind because everyone was moving on to UE5. So this week I made an effort to download UE5 and I'm working in it and I'm just
You're
happy
way
with
less
it.
paranoid than me. I was like, the stream is coming. I will do it right after the stream.
I was thinking the same thing, so you're not completely wrong. Because, you know, I had a stable build in early access, and then I don't know, I rolled the dice. But UE5's stable, and everything. Most of my Niagara assets are working. Even my UE4 Niagara kind of assets were transferred over to this UE5. Okay, so
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
far so far it's been super exciting and you know, definitely made me feel positive about you know, making the move to officially UE5. So exciting week, exciting time for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely do it. And I can always roll back if I need to, because then this other computer is my Perforce depot. 'Cause I'm like
Oh,
literally
nice.
surrounded by computers here.
Oh, nice.
You've got your own little Best Buy.
It's like the ship in the Matrix with all the monitors. That's my
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, same question to you, Nate. Any of the features in particular that have been making a big difference?
For me, it's definitely a nanite without having to worry about that as much. Has made the whole thing a lot more possible than I think it would be otherwise. Because I think a lot of those meshes would also take significantly longer for me to make. Like, there's that shot of the skull in the trailer, and I whipped that thing out in like 40 minutes before dinner and just checked it in. I was like, I need some like metal skulls and stuff, so let's do some skulls. Do that fast. So being able to get that much more content in the game will, I think, help a lot. Doing like a big open world game like this,
Yeah,
and doing the whole
absolutely.
thing in Blueprint, which has been super nice. Like, and I'll probably like add or change stuff, but I didn't run into anything but super minor stuff that I couldn't do in Blueprint, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite parts is just Blueprint because I am not a coder. I will never claim to be a coder. Nobody can make me code.
I
And
did
it's
it
not
like
because of a lack
20
of
years
will.
ago.
Which is no hate to the coders out there. The stuff that you do is incredible, and I can't do it. So I give you full props. But I personally, I can't do it. So being able to have
I
something
think
like the Blueprint system is good.
yeah, it's a good fit for like my art brain that is like slightly techie, but maybe not all the way.
Yes. It's a little easier when you have the visual symbols of it and you can literally physically draw out how things are connecting to something else, why it's working the way that it is. I agree. It
Hmm.
helps with my art brain. I need the
Yeah,
physical representative of it.
even seeing those wires fire live, for what it's actually doing. It's like, oh,
Yes.
that's where it's going. Really easy to debug too.
Yes. Yeah. Just delete out the node. Try again. Make comments. Lots of comments.
For sure. Even if I'm a solo dev, I'm like, I will probably forget what I was doing here. I'm going to put a lot of comments.
Yeah. So yeah, with Nanite, it's a good comment from both of you that it seems to be helping a lot with optimization between getting that really dense grass you were talking about, and then also being able to pull in sculpts or other models that would normally be kind of outworldly with maybe the amount of polys that they have, and being able to kind of just cut out the middleman, get straight into the engine, get everything lit and built, and be able to actually experience it real time I can definitely see how that's a total time saver. Has that helped at all with your optimization process as well?
It's almost like you're not thinking about it. Like if someone asked me, like, how many millions of triangles are you rendering? Like, yes, all of them, a billion. I don't know. Like there's a breaking point there, especially if you're layering them in a bad way. But it's pretty far before that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nate. It's kind of like you don't even really think about it, and I'm constantly in that stage where I'm prototyping stuff, so I don't even think about optimization as much as I should. But with Nanite, you kind of almost forget about it, which kind of sounds bad, but the prototyping constantly and just making stuff look good is like the main priority. But then, of course, Nanite just makes it easy where you can kind of delay that optimization later. I don't know. Don't tell
Yeah,
anyone
I
that said that.
feel like I'm far more likely to make the game run bad with like me doing something ridiculous in my blueprints or a bunch of transparent particles in front of each other versus all the geometry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I eventually will have to optimize just simply because it still has textures. So it runs great with Nanite. But then if you want to run even, there's always opportunity there. But yeah, I forget to really even do that with Nanite because it's so great. And yeah, it's kind of what I'm my current situation, I suppose, with UE5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
to
definitely
me
is
it's like
something magical.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
it's
like the
magic
biggest
for
tech
sure.
leap since normal maps for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The feeling of just bringing in something straight from ZBrush or straight 3D scanned into the engine is unparalleled. That is a high I've never experienced before. Just going straight from ZBrush into the engine and calling it a day. It's a good time.
Mhm. Yeah, and it has, what is it, the virtual shadow maps where it actually then uses all that detail to cast all those shadows, because that's one of the other problems with like the faked normal map detail you had before, is you'd have a rock with all these bumps, but then those bumps don't cast any shadow because they're not really there. Like some
Right.
games have done some tricks to get around that, but if it's really there and really casting the shadows, then it looks a lot better.
Yeah. Not just leaving everything up to the AO.
Exactly.
I've got to know, how about Lumen? How has Lumen been treating both of you so far? Is that a good experience as opposed to the previous types of lighting? I don't know if either of you had done too much with the built lighting before, or if you're still using a little bit of the built lighting, or are you trying to go more down the Lumen path?
For me,
I'm 100.
at least. Oh, sorry, Nate. You go ahead.
Okay. For me, I'm definitely 100% Lumen because my game is all fully dynamic time of day with different weathers for different regions, and the creatures can even take control of the weather. Like if we want, we can play a quick video of that. It's video 14, and it's been awesome to have that. Like I set up my whole weather system in about 2 days, and it's all set up with like inheritance, so I can just have a base weather and then make a bunch of variants off of that. It's worked out great, and I haven't really run into any issues with that. And it even can control the clouds and stuff, and like cloud shadows are a thing that are sort of built in as well. So I have those volumetric shadows that can change shape, and that will then get darker over the area. The fog can come in. Like that's something that's fairly complicated with a lot of different moving systems there, with like the sky, the fog, the sun, the clouds, but then you can just control all those things and interpolate between them, and there you go, weather system. Like,
Yeah.
easy peasy. Skip it.
No big deal. Just, weather system in 2 days. It's fine. How about you, Dan? What were you saying before about your Lumen experience?
Oh, so I've only really just played around with it in some of my test projects or whatnot when I started moving over to early access. And it's certainly great. It makes stuff look a little bit more realistic. Kind of my concern when I was moving over to UE5 early access was got all my previous kind of lighting situation gonna break when moving over, and those were pretty stable. So I've really pretty much stuck with some of that old lighting, like directional light, exponential height fog, some of those kind of UE4 core kind of lighting situations. But I'm excited to definitely look and revisit some of the Lumen stuff and apply it to some of my levels in my UE5 projects. So I haven't looked into it too much. Kind of looking at Nate's project. I follow his stuff on TikTok and kind of the stuff on YouTube, and it looks great. So something I'm definitely really interested into exploring, at some point.
Yeah, it gives, I keep coming back to this word, and it's probably going to be annoying by the time this stream is over, but again, that level of immersion, just getting the really intense fog in there and getting the dispersed sunlight coming in, it's very, specifically for what we just saw with the Axis Unseen, it's very ominous, which might not be the best compliment in other scenarios, but I feel like for this one, it's pretty on brand. So
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. Giant scary tree guy walking towards you. Want it to be extra scary.
yeah, a little bit intimidating for sure. But yeah, with that I would love to know about some of the challenges so far, because not everything is always, cotton and rainbows and happy good times. There's always difficulties when it comes to developing. And I feel like, again, especially as solo developers, there had to have been times where something was either very overwhelming or you weren't certain which direction to go with that. And I would really love to hear about one of those experiences and maybe how you pushed through it, how you got over it, or where you found the resources to go forward from there. Coming in with the hard questions.
Ooh, I got one. So
Okay.
I was running into issues of getting my ragdolls to behave and stuff, but it's really hard to set that stuff up right without having it like pull itself apart and stuff. That just takes a lot of passes, and you have to be very careful. But then I was thinking like, hey, I'm also having trouble picking up my arrows because my creatures would fall on them, and you have to go and pick them up. I'm like, you fell on the arrow. I can't get to it. But my game's kind of metal, and it's supposed to be controlled by this other entity in this other world that you're in. So I came up with a solution, which is blood explosions. So we can play video 5 to show my solution for ragdolls and corpses. So it's easy to find your arrows now because they explode. There you go. Nice puddle of arrows there.
Perfect.
This is just one of my little test areas showing it also.
Oh my, that goes so far.
Yeah, I ended up scaling it up like, no, the blood needs to be bigger. Bigger. Okay, there we go. That's big enough. It's very satisfying to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can find the arrows, and you definitely know where you took down an enemy, for sure. It was a little more difficult to see on the rocks when it was in the game, but in the test area, you could really see the radius of that thing was massive.
And you're right, and that's why I ended up putting in another system too, where I was like, well, okay at first if you have to pick up those arrows, but eventually that gets kind of annoying. So we can play video 6, where I added another power to the game, and this is where the arrows will come back to you. So you can upgrade this distance to be more and more. So they'll just fly right back into your quiver. So you can like take out the creature, and then as long as you didn't hit like stone or bone or something that would crack the arrow, then it can come back to you. So you still have to be kind of careful about where you're shooting them, but it's a nice way to get that arrow back without it being quite so annoying all the time. And then you feel
Yeah.
pretty awesome. You know, you can even set up traps that way. It's kind of hard to line up a shot backwards, but you can shoot a bunch of arrows into something and then get into the right distance, and they'll all come flying back at once.
Oh,
So
and it causes damage as it comes
it
back?
does. Yeah.
Amazing.
So, like all 10 arrows go thump, 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 thump.
Yeah. Oh, that's just nasty. That's just rude. I love that.
I usually end up just hitting the creature in the butt when I'm doing it, though, so it's not like an overpowered trap. You definitely have to be careful about it.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of pre-planning to go into that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that though. That's such a cool feature. And then of
Thanks.
course, just the quality of life, being able to get that arrow back is it's a nice touch. So how about for your combat, Dan? Is there any cool little add-ins that you put in?
Add-ins. I mean, I kind of discover most of my game mechanics, whatnot, but by accident sometimes. So some of the cool aspects of my game is that I'll be my missions, try to do a move and accidentally jump 15 feet in the air for some reason. It's like, oh, I should probably add a double jump or something. And then I ended up adding a double jump, and then sometimes and that was kind of something I struggled with. Like, should I add a double jump? That's not really realistic. It's kind of like I get some surprising ideas during those play sessions. Kind of one melee move I made during one play session, I thought was like, just kind of playing over and over and hitting a guy. I thought it was kind of cool where maybe we can add a sword slash, kind of one of those ridiculous sword slashes I had. So it kind of comes, it's unexpected, all these ideas that when I add to the game. So most of them are kind of just, trial and error. So I suppose so I don't have like a definite feature. I guess I can think that comes to mind that was fun right now. But all these ideas I have usually come through kind of unexpectedly. So it's kind of interesting side
That's a
effect, I
good way to
suppose,
do
when you
it,
develop
though.
that game.
Because
Yeah,
as you play that
yeah.
game, you're like, oh, here's this thing that naturally came up that I think is a better solution, as opposed to like some game design Bible where I wrote 300 pages before I even start making the game. Like mine is like a
Yeah.
3-page document with a bunch of one-liners. Like I'd rather be a bit more organic about it.
Yeah,
Like I ran into
it's,
the
it's
same.
definitely same issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a wonderful side effect, kind of like what the Bob Ross approach, I suppose. Happy accidents.
Happy accidents.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of. But there are some stuff that are more thought out, but it's more in the environment building aspect. So I guess like the castle that was featured in that video reel is kind of like a more thought out kind of thing. So if it was kind of like a feature thing that I'm happy about, that I kind of or what's well thought out, I kind of like that environment stuff. So and hopefully with some of these more of these tools in UE5, I can explore some of those crazy big environments that I've always kind of loved. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to
I
get those
have-
really far distance shots for sure.
Yeah, doing that stuff is great. I have another happy accident that reminded me of. Like you had your double jump, and I was like, how do I get up high stuff in my game? And so I have different arrows that do different things, and one of them like controls the wind, and then there's another one that slows time. So we can roll video 11, and so I decided to combine like the time distortion arrow and the wind arrow. If you do them together,
Oh yeah, I
You
saw
can
that.
then-
Oh yeah.
throw yourself up cliffs and things or across a gap. It doesn't make any sense like actual physics wise, but I thought it was pretty fun to then just throw out this bubble and then just launch yourself
Oh,
off
that's
a cliff. It's like rocket jumping, but with a bow, which is totally a thing they used to do.
That's amazing. I love that. Different arrow types and I feel like that's going to be a feature that I abuse constantly. It's just launching myself all the way across the map.
I have accidentally killed myself so many times doing that. And like, oh, I angled that way too. There's nothing there. I'm just going to fly right up and back down. Pancake.
Oh no. So there is fall damage.
Oh yeah, but you can
Okay,
also
so-
use like that time time arrow to catch yourself because it slows down time, so you can jump off of a cliff and then expand that time arrow and then land in it. Like we can play, what is it? Yeah, video 9 shows how that works.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's pretty fun because it's like another thing of like, well, I don't want to have some other elaborate mechanism. I'd rather build sort of like a deeper game than a whole bunch of different things. So I'd like these arrows to have a bunch of different purposes. So finding the ways that you can use them to do different things, not just to trap the creatures, but to help yourself, to queue up a whole bunch of arrows so that you can then fire them all at once is another thing that you can do, which is pretty fun. Yeah, here's the cliff part. Like, hey, you got to time it right, obviously. So I think taking that video, I cratered about 10 times before I got it. But with practice, you can do these things. And there's queuing up the shots so they all come at once. So if something is like really, really hard to kill, all those arrows go at the same time. It can be a good way to do it instead of having to like line up the perfect shot. And just like, whatever, I'm going to shoot a bunch of arrows at once.
Just get them all out of the way, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
I love that. I really enjoy the idea of certain mechanics being a bit more intuitive. You have to put a little bit more thought into it. I'm really glad that you told me about that because I would have never found that even on accident. So now I know.
But then the player will feel so smart if they figure it out. Like, I bet they didn't think of this. Like, I thought of it, and go for it.
I thought
They actually
of it,
all go
but
at different speeds, like how much it slows down you versus the arrows. Because those, like the
Oh.
arrows need to slow down a lot more than you. Because if it slowed you down as much as the arrows, you'd go in there and then you'd be like, I cannot even move.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Yeah, I enjoy that. You figured it out. Little pat on the head. Congratulations. Sort of.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. And then, of course, Dan, I was seeing that there are so many different types of attacks for yours as well, especially with the different. I was seeing a bunch of different sword attacks, different moves. Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of those?
Yeah, Lord of the Rings fan, so I had to have a sword. So I kind of racked my brain for a long time, just kind of thinking of some good moves, I suppose. So I get a lot of reference from anime. I kind of like the movement in some shows I watch in anime. So I animate those movements, and it's a lot of trial and error. Kind of that help. The reference is kind of helpful to kind of go off of, but then it's a lot of trial and error to kind of get the moves right. So that's kind of like just me animating those character animations and whatnot. But even with good animation, I kind of thought it was kind of a little stale because my camera setup before was really like a GoPro kind of attached to the guy, where it really was like this is not fun even with these awesome moves. So I had a great suggestion. So from someone from Twitter, they direct messaged me. It's like, it looks like a GoPro. You probably, like, yeah, like I could probably add some dynamic movement. So, getting insight from people, online has been super helpful in that regard. So, and I always had in my mind I wanted it to be a little bit more fluid. So, kind of different from kind of the games I've seen in the past. So, yeah, that's kind of my process, if you can call it that. It's a lot of happy accidents and whatnot, but yeah, getting insight from the community and has been super important. But then also a lot of trial and error to get things refined and whatnot. So yeah, and the moves some of those sword slashes, I kind of just thought, wow, you kind of feel like a kid, like, oh wow, wouldn't it be cool if you added like a sword slash to that guy? It's like, yeah, I can do that. So it's kind of like a child's like greatest playground, for example. I guess.
Yeah.
You can kind of think of something and then put it on the screen, which is amazing. I feel like an adult, but it's actually like fulfilling my childhood dreams like tenfold. So it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, as a solo dev, you can just be like, I'm gonna do it. Nobody's gonna stop me.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I love that. And then especially, I agree with what you were saying about the fluidity of all of it too. It doesn't feel like it's just, okay, I'm going to hit the X button and it's going to make this attack happen in a very robotic, all right, I did it sort of way. It looks like real sword combat. It's very fluid. Everything flows into the next thing very well. Do you have combo moves going on for any of that, or is it just that the animations are Rockstar?
And I have a set number of animations. I can show you like the blueprint and whatnot, but I have a set of animations for my power up mode and then my normal mode. So the power up mode is where like the blue swords, flaming and whatnot. But the thing is that I plan to have like a series of combos. But the thing that with most of these RPG games is that it's kind of like just spamming the button, and it's just kind of just spamming it until beating the enemy and that takes time. I don't have time. I have a full-time job and I got to work on this game, so I want a game. My at least approach to me playing games or finding games is that I want a game where I can kind of complete tasks kind of efficiently and without kind of running down a progress bar, essentially just running down a progress bar. And that's kind of my approach to working on this game. So there is a combo list, but it's kind of just so it's almost like a placeholder for probably other combat opportunities for my game. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great way to approach it, especially the idea of, not everybody has multiple hours all at once to be gaming forever and ever, as much as I'm sure we'd all love being able to do that. It's maybe not the most feasible, so...
Yeah, even though I'm doing an open world game, I share that view. And like, I'd rather have it be like you have a deliberate approach to combat, and if you did it right, you succeed, as opposed to, again, like, hey, 100 arrows at that thing. Like, that's fine for certain styles of games, but it's not the type of game I would like to make personally. Like, everything should matter to me.
Yeah, not to rag on those games. I've played plenty of those, throughout my life, but just kind of make something new, something. And your game certainly is kind of unique in that aspect. That I'm definitely interested in kind of that kind of approach to making games and whatnot. So yeah, we only have a little bit, like so much time in the day. Might as well have something where we can get some quick satisfaction, I guess, and kind of in quality versus quantity, I suppose. What I'm kind of trying to say. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in my game, I have that tree golem, right? And if you shoot it with a regular arrow, it's like, what happens? Nothing. If you shoot a tree with an arrow, it's not going to do anything. But I put in this whole fire system, which we can play Video 8, and then you can just, burn the tree golem down, and that works a lot better because it's so thin and spindly. Like, that thing will go down pretty quick once you light it on fire. And doing that whole fire propagation system was pretty easy in Unreal too. It just checks to see what's nearby, if it's flammable, and it will keep spreading the flames. You can even like light a creature on fire and it'll go running and catch something on fire. And the wind direction matters, which is pretty fun. Like, we can play Video 10 shows that, because it creates gusts when you change the wind direction with that arrow. So you can put out a fire and then gust the wind in a direction to like really quickly make these walls of fire, which is pretty fun. You can like sort of deny an area that way, like, hey, don't go this way, because it'll spread slowly on its own. But it's nice to have a way to be like, really quickly, I just want to make this whole area where they don't want to go there. If they have to, they'll go through it and catch on fire, but they'll try and avoid it.
That's amazing. Wow. Again, there's just so much thought that goes into how you can approach this. I love that. There was a question from chat about the arrows for that. If you can move faster than your arrow, can you accidentally shoot yourself?
Yes. I put that in. I put a little bit of a delay so you don't do it right away, but you can like go too fast and then run into your arrow. If you like launch yourself forward into it, you would arrow yourself, or you can just shoot up for whatever reason. If you decide you want to go back to your spawn point or whatever at the start of the game, you could just arrow yourself. I just did it one day because at first it was like nothing happened. I was like, well, why not?
Yeah,
it just works.
There is an arrow, so that's
no
amazing.
Practical reason.
But just be mindful. There is an arrow, and it is now behind you. So, and still moving.
That doesn't
love
happen
that.
when they're coming back to you, thankfully. I made sure that they fly like sort of feather way first, because at first when those were coming back to you, it was like pointy side first. It was like, oh, this feels very dangerous.
Yeah, I am now the pincushion, and this doesn't feel
Right.
great.
This is a terrible power.
Who gave me this? I love that. If you don't mind, there were a couple questions from chat that I'd love to dive into for both of you before we go back into, maybe we can end up pulling up some of the blueprints for both of the games and look at some of that stuff as well. But before we do that, yeah, there's a couple questions I want to make sure that don't slip through because they're pretty good. One question was, they were curious what the blockout workflow looks like for both of you, especially since you both have these really vast, impressive environments. What's kind of been the approach to that?
I can talk about that a little bit. So my main level that I have now, I just blocked out with a bunch of cubes, but I am doing something a lot more fancy. Like we can play this video I have in the background. It's video 2. And this shows one of the experiments in part of it where I did VR sculpting, and then I take that VR sculpt and I bring it into Houdini, and then I run erosion simulations on it to make it look not just like a bunch of like terrible blobs, but instead actual terrain. And then I can use the Houdini rules to then propagate trees and rocks and even creature placements. And then that just goes right into Unreal, and I have like my full terrain in there. And then if I decide I don't like it, though, I can take that same sculpt and then just adjust it some. So then it's sort of a nice natural way to have like this little sort of representation of your world that you can look at and figure out the sight lines and adjust quickly without having to just sculpt that all by hand in a program, which is nice. I find it just like a cool way to work. It's like staring at like a little model train set or something and building up those hills yourself. Yeah, and that whole video I put together was cool because it's just like each different thing that I did every day. I take my own like dailies to keep track of what I've done.
That's
But
incredible.
I thought that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's a very natural workflow of just being able to kind of incorporate one section into the next as you go along. I'm speechless. It ended up
It's
amazing.
Right there.
It worked
It's
out.
my terrible sculpts that you can then see the simulations on. But I did a whole bunch of them really fast, and it worked really well. So I'm looking forward to doing like my full landscape that way. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. We can stop that video if you want. It's just showing how I also VR sculpt my creatures and everything else. Like, it's just been a really fast way to work for me.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, if you had all the amount that you needed for the trailer in just 6 months, I mean, that's an impressive workflow. But then, how about you, Dan? What does your blockout workflow look like? Did you just dive right into it, or do you still kind of build up from a base there?
So I kind of I use a landscape generator to kind of create some of those landscapes, and then I identified some flatter areas within that landscape, which kind of seemed good. And then I'll just try to keep those specific areas I've highlighted within that landscape as kind of like a fighting area. So an area where would be a little bit more simplistic because I'll probably add some foliage and whatnot in that area, but then I'll have like a mesh, which would be like just a flat plane, a flat like a flat circle, which would be like a clean area where they can fight in. Simplicity is kind of a little bit more where I'm trying to aim towards for some of the combat areas, for like the exploring and whatnot. Those will be a little bit more up like hills and whatnot, roads, and those will be like some not high level combat, but then if I play test it and it seems fine, where it flows okay, where I'm not tripping over rocks or whatnot. It's kind of like a trial and error on determine which areas within a landscape are okay. And in these fighting areas, I'll probably add like a column or two for to make it look cool, but also kind of have the player run around trying to like not give them free reign over the area, make it a little bit more difficult for some of these places. So As when I first model stuff, I take some of the the simplistic shapes like the cubes in your cylinders and whatnot in Unreal. I'll drag them in, and then I'll kind of do like a sort of kit bash of that, and then if that kit bash of those simple shapes and whatnot, I'll model them myself, and then whatnot, and bring it back to Unreal Engine. And then that's kind of it's kind of like an iterative process, just to kind of tweak that specific area, see if it looks okay and if it plays okay. But I definitely lean towards more of the simplistic stuff, where we'll be like a flat area, and then we'll have like a column or two, or a statue. A statue is a nice accent to a specific area and whatnot. So
For sure.
yeah, so appearance plays like a big role, I guess, when I model stuff out. So yeah, that's sort of my approach.
Yeah, I love that. Keep it nice, simple, but very focused on aesthetic, which is a great approach to making a very beautiful looking game, if I may say so myself so far. They're curious, what landscape generator do you use? Do you just use the default one?
For some I do use I sculpt them myself. So in some of them I'll bring up the landscape tool and then just kind of sculpt. I go for simplicity more so. So doing it by hand is definitely I've tried, and it's definitely a way to go in some cases. I think the industry standard one is like World Machine. I've used that a couple of times, and then I've actually started moving over to World Creator because it just seems like an easier tool. But more often than not, I'll sculpt some of the landscapes myself. If I'll usually go back to a generator if I'm if I'm stuck or I can't get a good idea out or whatnot. So
World Machine
yeah,
is
so I
really
use
nice.
a bit of both. Yeah, I've always wanted to get a little bit better at it. It's just I guess yeah, I have to make it. It's like an industry standard from what I hear. So I definitely have to make an effort to look at that for sure.
I think that's a lot easier to pick up than Houdini too. Like I'm using it, but that is a beast.
Yeah.
Little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, the quick start to Houdini that's like 8 hours long. Like, oh man.
It's quick. What do you mean?
Or was it 20
That's
hours?
fine.
I don't know.
It all blends together eventually, it's fine. With that idea of workflows and stuff, they're curious, how has your typical workflow changed since switching to UE5?
I mean, personally, I didn't actually really use UE4 much outside of a few tutorials, but I would say the overall structure of it is more of what I'm used to, with like world partition is a really nice thing to have, because it seemed like that was a lot more difficult to do an open world game without that. So it's the divisions into cell sizes that I'm used to, so it's just sort of a natural way for me to work, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you asking about how it changed moving over to UE5? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, has your workflow
Yeah.
overall updated and changed a little bit since moving over?
So not a whole bunch. That's kind of one of the things why I liked moving over to early access and even Unreal Engine 5, because a lot of my stuff, my same process transitioned easily. So not a lot of complaints there. There's a little bit of go backward to kind of revisit some stuff that might not have been working in UE5. It did work in UE4, but those changes were minimal. One thing I can think of probably changed moving over to UE5, with Nanite, and polys, going back to polys, I don't have to worry about having in my in your ZBrushes, in your 3D modeling programs. I use Blender because it's free. It's awesome. I don't have
Blender
to
rules.
think about yeah, Blender all the way. But I don't have to think about poly counts too much when I'm. I still do the baking process where I have like a high poly mesh, and then I bake to my low poly mesh because of the way I do texturing. I'm normal my textures, my apps. But now I just flip on that nanite enable shock. It can only a certain number of vertices and whatnot. And I keep on going back to that nanite thing. It's great. I don't have to think about that optimization when I'm prototyping stuff anymore. I just kind of something together that I think will kind of type. I try to get stuff out quickly. So a lot of stress has been relieved in that case when I transitioned over from UE4 to UE5, and it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that it's a pretty smooth smooth transition from one to the other. I know I'm a little biased on the subject, but it's always relieving to hear that projects didn't take an unfortunate turn. Because I know moving engines is a very horrifying prospect for anybody. Because so many things can happen.
Yeah, I had people warn me like, "Oh, don't do early access. Wait until it's more stable or whatever." I was like, "It was fine. I've been using it for like 10 months and it didn't really run into anything."
Yeah, it's been, it works okay. Let's all calm down. Yeah. It functions. And then last question before we hop over into maybe digging into some of your blueprints so we can get into the meat of it all. What are you hoping to achieve through UE5 aside from Lumen and Nanite? Was there anything else that kind of was part of the tipping point in having you choose this particular engine?
I think it was definitely world partition for me, and like the HLOD system generating that stuff automatically. So whether or not I could do an open world easily was definitely like one of the major decision factors for me, because I wasn't going to do like a hunting game in levels. Like, I don't think that would be quite the same game.
Yeah, I like to kind of it's the same situation with me. Kind of the opportunity to make a little bit bigger worlds is definitely appealing. As a solo developer, I definitely want to scale down my kind of game, because it's not open world, but I definitely want large landscapes, and that's kind of something that I'm definitely looking forward to. It's you're giving us so much tools, and it's hard to kind of like, I just want to do more and more and more, but as a solo developer, you have to scale back. But offering these tools provide definitely some awesome opportunities to kind of explore and possibly add to your project. And then another thing I like about the UE5 is that, this is gonna sound so superficial, but the UI looks so clean now. The UI just looks so clean. UE4 was a little bit in hindsight, I was still working on like UE4, and it was good, but right now it looks so clean. It's still superficial of me to say that, but I appreciate a good UI.
No, I completely understand and agree. I mean, I think one of the best like highest downloaded plugins for UE4 was the one that changed blueprints to have the straight lines instead of the little noodles. So having a nice clean UI, I feel like it puts you in the right mindset for being able to create. So it's not superficial. I get it.
I think that's a good point too about limiting scope as a solo dev with all those tools, because some people ask me like, "Oh, did you check out like MetaHumans?" It's like, oh, that's so tempting. I could like set up my phone and do facial capture, but you go down like this whole road then of like, oh, but then do I have like a conversation system, and what about clothes? Like, okay, it's just me.
That feature
I'm getting hardcore FOMO right now with MetaHumans.
Mm-hmm. I keep reconsidering it too. It's like, maybe they could be all these dead and they're ghosts. I'm not promising anything.
Same here. I'm not promising anything either.
I won't hold you to it, but I will hold it against you. No. Yeah, feature creep is dangerous. Scope is, I feel like I sound like a broken record on every single episode of Inside Unreal, but it is scope and optimization are the two things that are arguably the most important, but are the least fun. For sure. So I got it. I get it for sure. But with that, we can come back to a lot more of these questions from chat. Make sure you keep sending them in. I do see them. We will get to them, I promise you. But I want to make sure we can also view all of the cool content that you guys brought for us. So, Dan, how about we start with you? Do you want to dive into some of the blueprints? I know there's been so many questions about the grass and how you managed to do this.
Oh yeah, so I'll definitely show the graphs at some point. But I guess I give a rough outline of what's going on with my blueprint. Um, so I'm one of those boring programmers. I had to when I first started, using UE4. Key things was that I needed to brush up on some of these other programming languages. So C++ was something I learned in school, but I wanted to pick up a project where I can brush up some of my skills. So, and also I shouldn't have been, but when I first used, scared of them, but I shouldn't have. It's so strange, and you can organize it where it's certainly readable, and for those artistic kind of people, it's definitely appealing to use blueprints. But my first approach when creating some of my projects was I wanted to create a C++ class because I could read code a little bit better than at the time than blueprints. So I just created for my main character this test third person character class, which I have certain attributes, like the weapon he's holding, some of these flags that determine if he's attacked or not. AI attack. So this is used, the same class is being used for, the enemy classes and whatnot. So I have functions that will call actual blueprints. So I feel like a mixture of C++ and blueprints is kind of like my sweet spot. So so I won't bore you with all the specific code and whatnot, just to kind of give you a little taste. But then I take that blueprint C++ class, and then I'll create my a child class, a blueprint child class off of that guy. So let me open this. This is where the blueprint logic comes in handy, and it's definitely I was scared to use blueprints at first, but I shouldn't have, because the reason why I was kind of reluctant to use is because I couldn't organize it in a way that made sense. I looked up some best practices and whatnot online. So some of these custom events are called by some of those C++ classes, and most of the movement related kind of behavior for my characters are done in these blueprints, and some of that business logic, some of that boring logic is kind of in the C++ side hidden. So. And then what I was mentioning earlier is the combo. So these set of animation montages that play one after the other. So you can see here I'm iterating over this attack count, and these are really just for so I can line up certain animations, whatnot. Let's take a look at this guy. These are just one of my many animations. Well, cloth is all weird there, but that's because it's in this animation preview. Oh, there we go. Clean up. It's still kind of wonky, but so that blueprint still just plays. It does some of the logic that you can see. So none of the boring stuff. So sword slashes. It's pretty exciting. So I put it in here.
I love that.
And then so that's kind of like for my heavy attack set. So I have a heavy attack set combo list that goes up here, and then my little bit more light style attacks are played in here. So here's a spinning attack, for example, and that's called by just a left mouse click button right at the moment. I currently don't have any controller support at the moment, but I've always dreamed of this being a controller style game. So maybe hopefully in the future this will be consoles and whatnot. But at the moment it's just a mouse click, and then spam all you want, and then go through like the animation. So this top half is the power up mode, and then this bottom half right here, determined by this variable, is my I guess power up move. So I can actually, so that's kind of like the gist of my main character blueprints. I mean, I have a C++ class that will create like the weapon class, and then I'll create a child class called blueprint sword. So and I have a number of them. The great thing about Twitter is that I can kind of ask the community, hey, what kind of weapon should I add for the game? And they'll be like, one of them is a bow. So I haven't put out any content on any bow and arrow stuff yet, but that was a suggestion. So, and a lot of fantasy related games have a bow and arrow, so I had to add it to the game. What else? A staff, spear weapon. So this blueprint
Ooh.
will utilize some. Yeah. So sneak peek at some. So I guess I can show you this guy in action. And actually, while I'm doing that, I can also pull up one of the environments that I use to play test this guy. Oh no. So here's one of my environments. And you can see kind of what I mentioned earlier is that this environment is a little bit more simplistic. See, it's like a flat plane, but there's some columns in here. Let's get rid of those wireframes. So a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more, a wide area where the guy can play around. The main character can run around where he doesn't run into stuff. Here's a big baddie right here that's just itching to fight me. But what's it? Oh, so let's when I create that C++ class and then create this blueprint animation class, blueprint class, it also has that handles some of the locomotion, like some of the running and the jumping and then the sword slashing. Well, not necessarily sword slashing because in those anim montages, but I have another blueprint which isn't like doesn't have a parent that's a C++ class. So this is purely blueprint, which will kind of do. Let me see if this guy can open. Which handles some of the movement logic. So, for example, some of the speed at which he's running, the direction where he's pointing. So a lot of kind of straightforward logic, but you need to put it somewhere. So I have it in this blueprint animation class. But one of the key things with this, so I'm still learning about the UI for this, is the state machine. Some of these, so all this is really just related to the running, the rolling of the character, like roll forward, roll sideways, and whatnot. So like a key part of this animation blueprint is the states in which the orders where the character should kind of animate to. So if he's running, let me go back. So if he's jumping, just kind of check if he's airborne. If he's airborne, then he's playing the airborne montage where he's just kind of like floating in the air and whatnot. And then landing is just that animation where he lands on the ground. So nothing too crazy. Just my character has a set of blueprints that that he uses to move about and to attack. So let's see this guy in action. So dodging by the animation blueprint. Its FPS is kind of all over the place right now because of my screen. But and this same, I just quit out. Sorry. And this same logic is applied to this big baddie right here. So in the case of him, his attack isn't playing an anim montage, but it's actually playing one of those functions I mentioned earlier. This AI attack, AI special attack. Where are you at? AI attack. Sorry, I went into the boring stuff, the code, but here it is, AI attack. So that's kind of like the gist. Some of the kind of my implementation of some of these characters and whatnot. And yeah, I shouldn't have been afraid of using blueprints at the beginning. I have a software engineering background, so I'm a little bit more used to some of this boring stuff because it's a little bit more readable to me. But with comments, with kind of these things that you can use, like I forget what they're called, to kind of order these things where you can actually add this redirect node. That's what it's called. Some of these things are helpful to kind of clean up your code. So there's online there's an argument where C++ might be a little bit more for performance, but I've used blueprints and I haven't had problems in that regard. The performance is really just the environment assets I bring in, and like I keep on mentioning, I love Nanite, absolutely love it. It's magic. Kind of with that, it's improved some of this prototyping and whatnot. And I guess as part of that, since I'm on the subject of Nanite, and one of the things I want to show is that I've seen some resources online where people have used Nanite to on big rocks and whatnot, million poly rocks. One of the things that was awesome because one of the things that I ran into a problem was that my FPS would just go down if I added the regular style foliage. So let me go to where my foliage is. So I create some of my own photogrammetry apps. I plucked a few pieces of grass from my backyard, and then I brought them in and scanned them. So I wanted some aspects of where I live into the game. So
that's awesome.
Where are you at? So this guy. Come on, picture. It's just a picture. There we go. So I just exited out. Sorry, but that was just a photo and the corresponding normal map for that scan. What is what I use for like the textures for the grass you can see right here.
Yeah.
But the thing is that's unique with Nanite is that at least one of the problems I also kind of ran in early access. It might have been addressed in UE5, but in early access with Nanite you can't create materials that accept the opacity map. For some reason with the opacity map, in regular kind of approach to making grass is that you have a card and that opacity mask will actually mask out this out of a grass. So which part is which part's the grass. And Nanite didn't work with that at the time in early access. So since polys don't matter less now with Nanite, I created an outline of that grass. So for example, this mesh, which would have been like a simple card, like four vertices could have been with the opacity map, but with Nanite, polys don't matter. So this has 398 triangles. That's like unacceptable for a piece of grass. I mean, but the Nanite, it makes it easy. So let me so that's just one card though. So let me show you this absurd number of vertices in this actual grass texture. So I copied one of them. So this one is gonna be Nanite enabled, and then this one is gonna be Nanite disabled. Now let's just open it. So look at this guy. It didn't say here. Nanite triangle. So look at that, 28,656. So that's absurd for grass. I mean, but let me bring it in. So I actually painted it already, and that's how this guy. I think my motion capture, my screen capture is kind of bringing down my frame rate, but otherwise, if I didn't have it running, this actually would be pretty smooth. But let me show you with painting and with grass, with not Nanite not enabled, so it would actually kind of bring it, maybe hopefully not crash my game, but let's see that FPS go down.
We're really testing the limits here.
I mean, this is it. This is like an edge case, so I feel kind of bad, kind of showing it off because it's not like it's absurd. 28,000 vertices on one little tiny mesh is absurd. So let's give it a shot.
Yeah, on games I've worked on, they were counting individual verts on grass. Be like, you got to get rid of one more.
Yeah. Oh, so it's kind of crazy. Like earlier it was a little bit, but now with this non-nanite grass, let me check if I have that. Yeah, this is the one that's non-nanite. So, I mean, it's absurd. Like, let me try to delete. Let's see if it changes. Uh-oh. Let's just remove this guy. Let's see if the frame rate goes back.
It's unhappy with us.
I mean, it's going up. I mean, let's check. It might be my screen capture, but I mean, in my experience with at least some of even the early access UE5, it was great. I think just some other stuff is bogging my system down at the moment because it should be pretty smooth. One of the things that's an improvement from early access to UE5 is that the thing I discovered just this week, because I updated to UE5, is that the nanite textures for some of my foliage, or even nanite in general, treated lighting a little bit differently than the non-nanite stuff. And the non-nanite stuff always seemed to have a little bit better quality to it. It had shadows, so I have a picture put up in here. So in early access, this was what nanite did to the material. This is the original material right here on the right. And I can tell right away just the right stuff looks a little bit better, but it's not using nanite. So, if I were to run this in early access, then this would bog down my machine a lot. So it's kind of like so if anyone is still on early access, I encourage you to give the actual UE5 a shot, because if I were to go back to my editor right here, let me bring out. Oh, that's a pretty big piece of grass. So that's nanite version of foliage, and that's the non-nanite version of the foliage, and they look identical now. I mean, it doesn't give that kind of washed out doesn't have those shadows, that ambient occlusion within that grass, and now they look identical in UE5.
Wow. Yeah,
I'm glad better. I'm not on early access. Yeah. So I'm glad that I made the transition, and that's pretty much my experience. The one thing I guess I want to highlight is actually this how stable it's been. That easy transition to UE5 from UE4. So the thing I'm going to show you next is one of the first environments I ever created for the game, and this was in 4.26. Where are you at? Sure, why not? And it's featured in the my video reel of my game. So this guy, this is basically identical to what it was in UE4. None of the lighting or anything has really even changed. Actually, I don't even think I'm even using lumen in here. All it really is just the same. So my main concern going over to early access was that all this stuff would look different, but it's been super stable. Some of my C++ classes, those have been stable. There's been a little bit of go back work in that regard, but something that's should be easy to address. I just only got UE5 this week, so like many others in the community, we're exploring some of these features and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of what my takeaway, just how great the transition's been. And then kind of, I guess, I gave you a sneak peek into some of the
exclusive,
the boring, exclusive, boring logic with the blueprint logic. The blueprint logic being the fun one, where it's that I like using blueprints now. Even with my background in using some of this boring stuff, I like using blueprints because it helps you visualize and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to show. I guess like you said, Tina, a sneak peek into Path to Etonway. So
yeah, we get the scoop. Exclusive
cool
look. Yeah. It's just so beautiful, especially that last shot with the castle, the tower is so nice. I'm never gonna get over it. It's just so beautiful, the way it's lit, the nice beautiful blue in the background, and it's so nice.
Thank you.
then now we've got to hop over into the Axis and Scene. Got to dig into some of that stuff as well.
Sure. Yeah, I can show some stuff. Okay. Got some stuff up. So I was going to talk a little bit about my creatures. And all the creatures are essentially based off of one master creature blueprint that I have. And I end up just changing, like, what's the model, what are the animations, speeds, attack ranges. And my perception system is fairly complicated since it's a hunting game. So I have to filter all these different things on, like, if you're crouching or not. And then they end up doing all these things where they control the weather. So I have to keep track of that. There's a whole heart rate simulation. So it sends events to the player to, like, increase their heart rate, because you get scared, so your heart rate goes up, and that ends up, like, muffling the audio a little bit and turning on screen effects. And see, like, switch to angry music. It ends up calling the music as well. And yeah, there's different events if it's a footprint versus a player and all of that. So then I just end up sending that to, like, the behavior trees and the Blackboard keys and all that. And then I can swap those out for different AIs. So, like, the tree golem acts different from, like, the weird deer looking thing, because that deer looking thing will just kind of wander around a little bit randomly looking for you. But the tree thing, it will just kind of stand there in the trees. And I've had playtests with other people and they're playing and they just don't even notice it. Like, oh, no. It's like, you didn't notice the 8-story tall guy? Okay. I'm like, I guess that's on purpose. It looks like a tree. And I track all sorts of other things separately, where there's a whole, like, section for smelling, because that, by default, you know, Unreal comes with a lot of things, but it doesn't come with smelling by default. So I had to make my own smell checks, where it's like, how far away are you, and what direction is the wind, and it will figure out whether or not they'll smell you, and then they'll start to come in your direction. When they smell you, they're not going to just, like, immediately go into a total sprint. Same with footprints. They'll sort of track you and try and find out where you are before going completely ballistic. Yeah, and this is, like, one of my behavior trees where it sends all that data. It's relatively simple. And I'll show in a second how that all practically works. I'll just close out the blueprints. It runs a little bit better when I do that. And I mentioned, like, the weather system too, and how that was relatively easy to implement. And it's kind of just like a series of timelines and events where I just, like, update my sun over time, which changes where it is. And at a certain point, it will call an event to either trigger daytime or nighttime. And it goes over to here to, like, change the music and change some variables. And separately, I'm running all these, like, region roles for, like, keeping track of all the different regions and what the weather is, because I don't want you to, like, leave a region that was sunny and come right back to it and, like, oh, now suddenly it's raining. Like, they're all kind of keeping track of that. And I also want to show that in the distance. Like, over there it's raining, here it's foggy, there it's clear. I'd like to have it so you can see those all from a distance. And the player is also, like, probably my most elaborate of blueprints. Like, it's this whole mess. This is just, like, one of the pages of tons of stuff. So I have the whole system for, yeah, like, I could go my other event graph over here, whole feeling system and heart rate.
I love blueprints. I love pulled out view of
Zoom.
blueprints. It looks so insane.
Yeah, because my feeling system is, like, I have all these different powers you can get, and one of them is to, like, feel the warmth of the tracks to see how old they are. Because in some games with, like, that are more UI heavy, you might have to, like, activate the track and it'll be like, oh, it's old or not. But instead I have this series of tattoos on your hand that's activate to tell you if you're close to a track and, like, how old is it. So then I update all of that stuff. So I'll just jump in game to show a little bit of this. This is my main, like, test level that I'm building out. So I can actually hear what I'm saying. And, like, these are the altars where you save. So I mentioned, like, you do that in game. Like, you don't have to pop up a save menu.
Right.
And you can see, like, this little tattoo activated on my hand. That one is, I call it tremors. It's, like, kind of like Spidey sense, like something nearby is moving. And I don't know exactly where that is. You can see over here, you can see my patented Smell-O-Vision the red particles are the smell. And if my heart rate goes too high, though, I don't see that anymore. So if I'm like jumping around, like I'm not going to see that anymore. And this is a creature that I put in just for testing purposes to make it a little easier to show stuff. So I can show like, that's how far he can like see and hear. And I can just start to like get his attention. And then he'll see these footprints and start to follow that. And like I said, normally they can see much, much further than this, but it's easier to show. This is showing, though, how it really matters what you're walking on. Like if I was walking on rocks, I wouldn't be leaving these footprints. But on the other hand, those are louder. So you have to pay attention a lot to where you're going.
Very cool.
And let me turn that off. And everybody likes blood explosions, so I didn't make the shot. But then see, it left those tracks, so this tattoo will activate. And then I don't have to like stare down at the ground quite as much that way. Like if you're close,
Right.
it will just end up activating. So it ran off somewhere that way. I'm not going to bother tracking him down right now, just make things easier. But also you can see how the weather rolled to this different one where it's sort of foggy, and randomly it will change to be sunny, and I can change the cloud shapes. And since it's like sort of a surreal world, I wanted those to happen a little bit more accelerated. I kind of like those like nature documentaries where you always see those clouds moving through the mountains and stuff. It's like, well, what if I just do that kind of stuff in a game? Like that looks cool. I like that. And those are real clouds, kind of nice. Here's like that quiver check I mentioned. Like this is the Knight's arrow, so I only have one of them. But if I switch to like my more common one, yeah, there it is. And that's how I'm also doing lore in the game. I didn't want like another menu where you bring it up and like flip through all the pages of the lore in there. I wanted like a physical book that you then look at. So you can like flip through the pages of this, and you can find new ones in the world, and it'll slot into this thing. I thought that was kind of like a fun way to do it.
Yeah, I love that.
And if it ever gets dark, I can bring out my fire arrow, and I can show really quick actually how it's really easy for me to just bring up my little weather controller here, and I can switch it from sunny, foggy, to like that NPC controlled weather where all the clouds are again like a completely different shape. And it just updates that like instantly. And if I want different time of day, switch it to nighttime and see how everything looks. That just again works right away. And let me go to the skull thing I mentioned. Like this is that skull I mentioned that I did in like 40 minutes.
Yeah. Incredible.
And it's just like enhance. So it's nice having all that geometry like actually there. You know, you can look at all the triangles, and it's like, yeah, again,
Oh my
all
gosh.
the triangles. So many.
Insane.
And I always like looking at this view. It's just pretty cool how it's just, you can see it dynamically changing as you go further away and all the little chunks. Kind of another cool thing that not many people talk about is like the in-editor modeling tools too. Because I have like these little arches, and this is actually a Megascan asset, but it was a tree that was straight up. And I was like, well, I want these bent versions instead to make these little arches. But so you can just start deforming meshes in editor to get whatever you want. And that's super handy. Like I also did it for these things, which were a little bit bowed up. And instead I took them and bent down the edges, so it was easier to then copy that all around and then build out my whole landscape that way. Because if they're bending up, it's really hard to do that without getting tons of holes everywhere. So it's kind of like a bunch of landscape cookies that I've spread around of rocks and everything, but then that's all nanite geometry. Works great. And another fun thing that I haven't shown yet. So I mentioned like all the arrow combos, and one of them that I ran across was like the fire arrow and the time arrow. It's like, what if I combine those things? Do I want it to just slow down the fire arrow? Like that's kind of boring. So what if I instead make it do this? I just make it explode. So that one is pretty fun. So if a creature is nearby, you can like set this trap for it, and it'll come by, and then you just boom. And it's really easy to, if I do this too close, not so good
Oh
for you.
yeah.
And this is showing also another one of my in-world elements for the HUD, and like the tattoo that shows up on your hand is for your health. So then you have to use one of those healing items, and your health will go back to normal. So that's some of the stuff that I have. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed working with Unreal 5. Like, all this has gone really smoothly.
I love being able to actually get in and see just everything that's behind the scenes, get it into the actual blueprints, get into the code, just, pull back the curtain from everything, being able to see how everything actually functions. And then again, I know I keep bringing it up, but the fact that both of you have done this on your own as solo developers, that's an insane amount of work, which, sure, there may be features and tools that make some aspects of it easier and run a little bit smoother, but overall, that is a lot of work for one person to divulge into just these singular projects, and both of them have turned out absolutely incredible. I mean, I will do it. I will be so bold as to say they look like AAA games. They look incredible. They're immersive. They just seem fun, and they're beautiful, and I'm so proud. I feel like I don't even know what to say from here, because I'm just going to be repeating the same things over and over, but it's the work that both of you have put in is incredible, and obviously it is paying off. I mean, and it's not just me. I'm looking at the chat, and chat is also elated with the work that both of you have done so far as well.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. And obviously couldn't have done all that without all of the stuff that's in there for us to use in UE5, Megascans, and Nanite, and all that. Like, if you asked me like 10 years ago, hey, are you going to go make an open world hunting game by yourself? I'd be like, no. But now I think it is actually possible with all the tools. Like, it's gotten a lot easier to make stuff, in my opinion. Even though they're always talking about how like games get more and more expensive to make. It's like, that can be true in a lot of cases, but there's also ways where you can just leverage all these tools to do a lot more. And that's not necessarily true. It just depends on what you're trying to make.
Yeah. It's the tools and how you use them.
Yeah, I agree with Nate completely. And I always kind of just think, especially this week with this UE5 stuff, just kind of like it brought me back to kind of like that first viewing of that Rebirth video from Quixel. I mean, I had goosebumps at the time just kind of watching that. I watched that video like an unhealthy amount of times, and at that time it just kind of opened so many like doors or opportunities for me to kind of explore some of my dreams of like world building and whatnot, storytelling. And then same experience with UE5, just constant goosebumps this whole time. And looking at kind of like games like Nate's, which are so like detail oriented, like it's so like realistic and whatnot. It definitely pushes me to kind of create something, just as good, or probably something that, is enjoyed by at least some people in the gaming community. So it's with these tools, it's just kind of, helping that, helping that pursuit and whatnot. So super grateful for this being free. Also, it's free. It's awesome. It's free. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. But yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's exactly for reasons like this. It needs to be free so that people like you both, who are just on their own solo developers, can make the project that you want to make your dream game. Nothing stopping you, sort of thing. Have
Exactly.
the tools that you need. Please make me a cool game that I will spend way too many hours on and no life for several months at a time.
Yeah, I think it opens up that whole like democratization of game development type thing, where we might have ideas like this, and previously at scale, like you probably wouldn't get all of the things that we want to build as indie developers greenlit and a whole company behind it and stuff. But if it's easier for us to just go and make it without having to go through all of those hoops, that I think opens up a lot of things for players who like, hey, I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but I hope there's people who want to listen to heavy metal and hunt monsters with weird stuff. It's like, I hope it's not just me. And they get their game now.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's available. Have it.
Yeah.
Which I do think is another cool thing. Obviously, both of you have so much passion for the projects that you're making. And I love, it seems like these are games that not only you enjoy making, but something that you would also want to play, which I think is the best place to be from a developer standpoint.
Yeah, because you always have that in your mind. You're not going to make a game that you don't want to play. And you'll play other games and think of like, how would I do it differently? So you could just go do it.
Yeah, just make it.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like most gamers, I suppose. It's not like an original, dream or whatnot, but I think most gamers like to pursue like some sort of field in video games, and it certainly is the case for me. So just having these tools provide that opportunity to explore that, even like test the waters when I first used UE4. It's a big thing for for fans like us. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was like a tiny kid playing games, and some people were like, oh, I want to grow up and be a fireman. And I was always like, I just want to make games. And I just kind of stuck with that.
Absolutely. It's the stuff that we enjoy continues with us, and now we're older and we can spend more time on it. There are a few more questions from chat that I'd love to pose to both of you, just real quickly, if you're game for that.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah.
First, we're going to go with one of the heavy hitters. But what advice would you give to other developers when planning their game?
Limit scope in some ways. Like focus on your strengths, I think, is a big one. Because like that's exactly why I'm not doing all of the NPCs and conversations and stuff. Because like, what is my background? It's making big open worlds and doing it fast, like Skyrim and Fallout and stuff. So it's like that was what I wanted to focus on, because I can make a lot of stuff fast in an open world, and that's what I'm used to. I'm not gonna switch to like, hey, I'm gonna do a top-down RTS. Like I've never done that. So doing that and then paring it down to what works for me.
Scope.
Mm-hmm.
It's always scope.
It sounds obvious, but it's always scope.
What about you, Dan? Got any words of wisdom?
Yeah, scope is a big one, but one of the things that's been super helpful for me, at least, is just getting some advice from people out in the world, because it's kind of easy to work in kind of your own vacuum, and you kind of get fixated on a specific thing that might not be too interesting or important to address. So one of the things that I started out doing when I first created, even had the idea of Path to Etenway, was kind of post my tweets. I post on my feeble attempt to kind of market my game. I post on Mondays and Wednesday and Saturday. So those are the times I post. And it's also to kind of market it, but it's also kind of get some constructive criticism from people that play games, obviously. So it's always kind of to get some sort of review. You're a solo developer, but that doesn't mean that you should be working in a vacuum. So whatever chance or whatever kind of opportunity you can kind of share without spoiling too much of your game, try to share it to family or friends, or in my case, I try to do tweets. My feeble attempt to market the game, but it's also a review process as well. So, and it's a constant process. Getting insight from other people and whatnot. So, yeah, that's kind of, if I had any advice, that'd be kind of one that's been helpful to me.
I agree with you, and that's actually like why I announced when I did, like after 6 months, as opposed to like, oh, I could wait like a year and a half or something, or 2 years, or however long it takes, and then unveil it. I think it's more interesting that way, to like see what people are thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, get that outside perspective to kind of help push things forward a little bit more, for sure. Great tips. Those are all great tips. I hope everybody in chat is taking notes right now. This is, there will be a test on this later. Okay. Next question. Do you have any recommendations as far as hardware goes for people that want to start developing, maybe even doing solo developing on their own?
I mean, my opinion on that is to just get the best that you can afford, because especially if you're like a solo dev, any roadblocks in your efficiency, you're affecting the entire team. So, like, I got the best that I could. Like, obviously, you have to do it within your budget and stuff, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah, for my case, I would have to agree, get the best you can, because in some solo devs cases, it's kind of like their side gig, so they only have like a limited amount of time. So anytime you can kind of improve your workflow to work more fast and more efficiently is also great. That being said, I don't have the greatest hardware, but with some of the approaches with UE5, with this high poly stuff, where it makes it a lot better, easier on my machine. Due for an upgrade at some point, but you get what you can afford, and if what you can afford isn't in your mind isn't so great, it's certainly not true, because it's better than nothing. So get the best you can for sure, but I'm able to develop on like a 2-year-old machine, on like an RTX 20 series, 16 gigs of RAM. So it's not like the latest and greatest for sure, and I'm able to make it work. So hopefully that encourages other people with machines that aren't as capable or whatnot to pursue this kind of thing. So don't let it get you down. That's basically my gist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I would mention is the Quest. I know I've talked about like the VR sculpting, but this thing is pretty cheap in the amount of time you end up saving. I think that thing pays for itself, honestly. Like,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I saw your posts were awesome about that sculpting with the tool. I have a Oculus, and that kind of got me interested. Looking, I follow your social media and whatnot, so it's definitely certainly interesting
knew-
seeing your process, and I definitely want to get into that for sure.
thanks. Yeah, who knew 110,000 people or whatever wanted to watch me sculpt a stick?
Hey, it was entertaining. I loved it. I liked it. I liked it. So
It's very soothing. It's just like whittling in real life,
I'm just saying, the things that people want to know the most about is foliage and rocks. So it's, sculpting a stick. This is prime content, okay? This is what the people want. But yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you. It's a matter of getting whatever is the best for what is feasible for you at the time. And Dan had some really great words of wisdom there of something is better than nothing. So if you start with something that maybe you would normally deem as not the most ideal machine to start with, it's still a start. It's still something that you can follow along with our online courses with. If you're a beginner, make sure that you check out our learning section on our new community site. There's a lot of beginner-friendly tutorials there that are easy to follow along with, even without the highest, latest, greatest computer. I know I haven't updated in a while either. Probably should at some point, but it's fine. So
Yeah,
I
use
agree.
that
Start somewhere.
video tutorial site all the time. That thing is great.
Yes. Yeah, absolute lifesaver. And there's so much content on there. A quick plug as well, you can also post community tutorials on the new community site as well. So if you don't want to hear it straight from Epic, you can at least hear it from other people. Let's see. I want to grab just a couple more questions. I want to take up too much of your time. Let's find one. Let's find one really good ender one that we can end on a super high note with. Although, honestly, I think that was a pretty high note of just do it. Get a computer and do it.
I think even if you don't, though, another thing is just finding workflow efficiencies. Just find the best way to work. Like hotkeys, coffee and hotkeys. That's my trick.
Yes,
That's a good
coffee
one, yeah.
and hotkeys. That should be put on a shirt, honestly.
It should be.
Coffee and Yeah, coffee and hotkeys. That's the real takeaway from all of this. Macros as well. Macros are helpful. All
Yeah.
right, I found it. I found the question to end all questions of Jeff. um, in your process of moving forward from here, what is your advice mostly to beginners beyond the idea of, keeping down scope and aside from, get the hardware that's good for you, just what is your motivation, your inspiring moment to give to beginners who may be interested, especially now with the release of UE5, of getting into game development?
Our inspiring moment, like the
Yeah, either what brought you into it, or if you just have something that you think would be inspiring to others to try and get them to just go for it, just start.
I think it's just knowing that even if you make something really weird that you might think you're the only person that thinks it's cool, a ton of people might end up resonating with that and also thinking it's really cool. People like all kinds of different things. It's not just big AAA games. Like, nothing against them. Like, I worked on plenty of those also, but you can do your own weird thing and people will like that too. You just got to get it out there and like keep trying. And every time you do something, it will be better. So you just got to keep always putting stuff out there and making projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep practicing. And not everything's going to work the first time.
No, it probably won't, but that's okay.
Absolutely. How about you, Dan? What do you think?
So it's gonna be like a cop out kind of thing because it's really similar to me. Just kind of keep on trying, but it really is that kind of same thing. Half of the stuff I've made in UE4, I'd definitely be super embarrassed to show now. This was before kind of Path to Etonway came into picture, but it's really just if you have like if you see in a video online or in movies or TV, if you get like some sort of inspiration from even just a tiny idea, it's worth pursuing. And if your first shot in trying to attempt your idea isn't the greatest thing ever, just keep on practicing. In my, I guess I'm a terrible artist. I didn't go to school to train to be an artist, but just keep on my constant attempt to try to make something better. Just made me improved as an artist and kind of my, I don't know, artistic eye, if you can call it. I don't know if I have one of those or not, but
For sure.
but just keep on going at it because like I said, half of the stuff I've created in other game engines and even in Unreal Engine 4 has just been, I'd be embarrassed to show now, but it's always important to get some of your bad stuff out first so you can get your good stuff in later. So it's just constant practice, constant exposure to the thing. So yeah, I heard someone online. Sorry, I don't know exactly who it was now, but they told viewers that get your first game out first because it's gonna be a bad one. Just get that one out first. So
yeah,
so
one of the first games I made as a kid, it was called Oiram, which is just Mario spelled backwards, and it was a piece of crap.
Those games are
it'll
important.
get better.
They get you. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, thank both of you. I agree with absolutely everything that you've said. I think that's some great pieces of advice for beginners, especially people who are just now jumping in because of UE5. I mean, you two serve as prime examples of stuff that is absolutely achievable just on your own, which is incredible, So thank you both so much for coming onto the show and showing us your projects. Both the Axis Unseen and the Path to Etonway both are just incredible projects, beautiful projects. I cannot get over, seriously, just how beautiful both of them are. And I am so very much looking forward to playing both of them when they come out. Not that I'm asking for a game key, but I mean, if you wanted, you could just, I'm just saying, you have my email, so you could just drop it whenever you, but Thank you both, seriously, so much for coming on and showing us some of your behind the scenes, talking more about your games and how all this works. And then also, of course, thank everybody who came to watch the show. Obviously, it's great that we were able to come here and talk about all of this stuff, but thanks to you for taking the time to come and watch and take in all of this wonderful content that these two have given to us today. But other than that, any final notes from both of you? This is the time. Do your promos.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was really great and a lot of fun. And yeah, for anyone who thinks hunting monsters with heavy metal sounds awesome, you can wishlist the game on Steam or the Epic Store. So look for the Axis Unseen.
Yeah, and thanks Tina for the opportunity. It's been awesome just kind of chatting about Unreal Engine in general, and I like thank you for the opportunity. And obviously, you're getting a game key, obviously, because of this awesome
Yes,
opportunity.
obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, if anyone digs, a sword slashing fantasy RPG game where you're running about defeating enemies, and if that's your thing, then follow Path to Etenway on Twitter and Instagram. That's usually where I'm at. But yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
do it. Go
Thanks.
follow them everywhere because their stuff is incredible. Their updates are fun. I've been following both of them for way longer than they've even the talks of them being on the show for. So they're great. Please go follow their stuff, wishlist their stuff. It's going to be great. But other than that, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with our community today. And thank you everyone for coming to watch our stream. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand later. So if you couldn't catch it all, don't worry. You can catch the rest of it later. Also, don't forget to keep up with us at Unreal Engine on all social media, as well as come say hi in our forums, where you can get the latest news and also find all of the links associated with today's stream, including where you can find these two online and their projects on Steam as well. But with that, thank you everyone so much for coming, and don't miss next week's show as well.